A group of young adults show up at your house one day. One of them gets out of the vehicle and starts arguing with you. Things turn heated. You part ways and think all is forgotten. 2 hours later, they show up again. This time with 8 other people, and revenge and murder in mind. My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. I've dedicated the past 20 years of my life to helping families of the missing and murdered. Join me. We're crossing the line. Late into the day on October 20th, 2022, Pennsylvania State Police receive a call about a missing adult. Trooper Josiah Murdoch arrives at what is a modest country home in Buffington Township, Indiana County, Pennsylvania. Buffington Township is in the eastern portion of the state, due east of Pittsburgh, west of Altoona. Last census shows about 1,200 people in town, spread over about 30 square miles. So this is a sparsely populated area of Pennsylvania of mostly retirees, with homes spread out in a suburban-rural mix. First thing Trooper Murdoch does after stepping out of his vehicle is find the patrol supervisor already on scene, get a lay of the land and an idea for what is going on. Murdoch is told that a young woman is upset, crying and talking about her cousin, a 19-year-old man who has been missing since early afternoon, and the family is greatly concerned for his well-being. 19-year-old Hayden Garreffa of Ebensburg, Pennsylvania, had recently moved into his grandmother's Buffington Township home. Hayden has 5 siblings, 2 sisters and 3 brothers. His family describes him as a loving soul who frequently and spontaneously will tell them how much he cares about them. He keeps to himself, likes to play video games, enjoys cooking, gardening, fishing, camping, and taking long walks. One of his passions in life is to help people and animals, and Hayden often volunteers to do things for the family and even the township, such as picking up garbage along the roadways, proud of being able to play a small part in keeping his community clean. He's a good kid who has never been in any trouble. His medication and keys and cell phone are still inside the house, Murdoch is told as he looks around. When an adult is reported missing, it's a bit of a different situation for law enforcement. Any number of scenarios are possible, but when a person leaves behind those essentials, the stakes are raised a little bit higher. It's never a good sign, and it generally means the person obviously left in a hurry, was forced to leave, or he left on his own accord and planned on never coming back. There is also another issue where Hayden is concerned. He is a person with autism. Let's get him entered into the Crime Information Center as a missing person. Murdoch and his Pennsylvania State Police colleagues decide almost immediately. The Crime Information Center is a lesser-known database to CODIS and others. Law enforcement use it as a ground zero for criminal record history, fugitives, wanted people, stolen property, and missing persons. It's where state, local, and federal law enforcement officials can go, along with additional criminal justice agencies, to conduct searches with immediate results. It's operational 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Instant information, per se. Murdoch is then told that Hayden's family worries about him sometimes. Of course, part of that is a concern about him wandering off alone and becoming overwhelmed and unable to find his way back home. Still, Hayden would never take off on his own without his personal belongings, and surely not tell anyone if he planned on going somewhere. What's more, he knows his way around town and would never get lost. But more than any of that, his cousin says she knows what happened. At least how he disappeared. Next thing the state police do is release a photo of Hayden to local media and contact all law enforcement agencies and alert them to be on the lookout for Hayden. As they continue talking to the cousin, she brings up a scenario leading law enforcement to believe that some sort of foul play is involved in Hayden's disappearance. And time, they now realize, is not on their side. According to Hayden's cousin, who witnessed the events of the day, she claims Hayden was actually kidnapped. Kidnapped? Murdoch asks after the cousin explains. Earlier that morning, the cousin says, 4 people showed up at the house, and Hayden got into what she describes as a verbal altercation with one of them. They were standing in the driveway, screaming and yelling at each other as several others looked on. When the situation calmed, all 4 people took off, and Hayden went back inside the house. Several hours later, however, they returned. This time, with more people. One of them accosted Hayden and then forced him into what is described as a red Dodge Caravan, Murdoch recounted in his report. How many people in total would you say? Murdoch asks Hayden's cousin. There were 7 others inside the van. So 8 people show up, one of whom argues with Hayden. They get into a fight of sorts, and then Hayden is dragged into a van with 7 other people inside. Did Hayden even know these people? Murdoch asks. He knew one of them, she says. Abductions of this nature are extremely rare. The number of missing persons in the United States, according to the latest statistics in 2021, was actually at the lowest rate since 1990. When you look at the rates of adults being kidnapped or reported missing, the numbers are even lower. In 2023, the last time data was collected, there were 563,000 missing person reports filed. The most likely states where you are at risk of being abducted are New Mexico, Nevada, Kansas, and South Dakota. But to be clear, kidnapping and abduction are independent crimes and mean different things to law enforcement. Kidnapping involves grabbing a person by force, threat, or deceit. And the intent there is to detain that person for ransom, political reasons, or some other purpose. Whereas an abduction is snatching a person by persuasion or fraud or force or violence. As of this moment, state police believe Hayden has been kidnapped, which is, in terms of concern, a positive sign in this case. In further speaking to the cousin, Murdoch gets the impression that Hayden knows that one person, a young man he was arguing with just before they took him away. So it's not as though a group of strangers rolled up and decided to kidnap Hayden for some reason no one at this time seems to know. Hayden is a handsome young guy with closely cropped brown hair along the sides and blonde highlights like spikes on the top. It's not as though the guy has any enemies or people after him that anyone close to him knows of. He kind of keeps to himself, does his own thing. The question troopers have, beyond the obvious whereabouts of Hayden, is why would a group of 8 people want to kidnap him? It hardly makes any sense at all. As they continue talking to Hayden's cousin, she brings up something quite alarming, which quickly puts a ticking clock on the case. The main person Hayden was fighting and arguing with, a 21-year-old guy named Isaac Buczkowski, turned to the cousin just before they left with Hayden and venomously said, "You won't have to worry about him again, because he will be dead by the end of the day." My longtime listeners know that I rarely suggest podcasts. Yet a good friend who is responsible for bringing me into the podcast arena, Lauren Bright Pacheco, an incredibly detailed and tenacious Emmy Award-winning producer, investigative journalist, and veteran podcaster, just launched her latest, Murder on Songbird Road, a multi-part limited series from iHeartMedia focused on the stabbing death of 11-year-old Jade Marie Beasley in the contentious conviction of her father's fiancé. I cannot recommend this series enough. You can listen to Murder on Songbird Road on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows. I'll be right back after a short break. After Trooper Murdoch's assessment of the situation, late into the afternoon on that Thursday, October 20th, 2022, Pennsylvania State Police bring in every available officer to help search for Hayden, working under the assumption that if Isaac Buczkowski meant what he said, they need to find Hayden fast. It doesn't feel like this is some sort of sick prank, or even an idiotic plan to extort money from the family by kidnapping Hayden. Surely not after what the cousin had heard Buczkowski say as they took off with Hayden. The motive, they soon learn after spreading out and talking to different people, is that Buczkowski is pissed about something that happened between Hayden and a friend of Buczkowski's, 18-year-old Talon Edwards. There was an incident, Trooper Murdoch's report says, though he doesn't mention anything further about what might have happened. The plan was to abduct and assault Hayden, Murdoch goes on to note in that same report. A plan designed by Buczkowski and his girlfriend, 18-year-old Summer Settlemeyer. They are also under the impression that Talon Edwards, the young woman at the center of whatever happened, was likely in the van with the others. So there is this intense fear that time is now not on their side. And those 8 people had a plan in place to do something to Hayden, retaliate against him for some reason. If you are a regular listener, you might know what I am about to get into next. The idea of 8 people going along with a plot they seem to dream up after watching a cartoon or a Quentin Tarantino film with the idea that they could actually get away with it. Can 8 people, any age, keep their mouths shut about such a thing? It's highly improbable. And with people so young and inexperienced in life, once investigators get one of them inside an interview suite, he or she will crack like a dry twig. And these cops looking into the disappearance of Hayden Garreffa, I might add, are some of the best in the state at what they do. I've dealt with the Pennsylvania State Police on a number of cases in the past, and they are some of the most dedicated and experienced professionals I have ever met. A day goes by and there's no sign of Hayden. It's now Friday, and although investigators have tracked down some potential friends of those involved, they cannot seem to find Mr. Buczkowski, who is the key to finding Hayden. They know that a red Dodge Caravan is involved, so that is a start. How many red Caravans can there be in a township of 1,200 people with only 360 total households? That is, if the group is actually from the same township. By the end of that second day, they get a lead that, in fact, Buczkowski was last known to be living in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Johnstown is about 20 miles south of Buffington Township. It's an interesting place with the city basically tucked way down in a valley. If that name, Johnstown, sounds familiar, it's because books have been written about the Johnstown flood of 1889, a horrible tragedy occurring after the South Fork Dam, 14 miles north of downtown, a structure which acted as a wall protecting the city from rainstorms and major flooding, cracked and then collapsed. And so without any warning, heavy rains produced a literal wall of water flooding the city, killing 2,200 people, most of whom drowned, with others succumbing to the fires started by the flood. As investigators get a lead that perhaps their chief suspect, Butch Koski, lives in Johnstown, they begin putting together a list of names associated with what is a ragtag team of kidnappers. As they bring them in and start questioning everyone, a scenario takes shape. It's clear that Butch Koski had been the driving force behind the kidnapping. He and Talon Edwards had devised a plan to kidnap Hayden and basically beat him up because of what Murdoch's report described as ill will among them. A beatdown is one thing, of course, but things go from bad to worse after they locate and bring Talon Edwards in and start talking to her. Edwards sits down. She seems a bit shaken up, but she signs a waiver under her Miranda rights warning, opening her up to talk. "We plan to kidnap and assault Hayden," she says. They, of course, want to know where Hayden is now. Edwards hesitates a bit, but then lays it out. "I stabbed him several times," she says. Who else participated? Edwards names 18-year-old Summer Settlemeyer, Butch Koski's girlfriend. By now it's clear that Hayden is likely dead. After interviewing many of the others in the van on that day, state police get an idea where they left Hayden's body.
On Saturday, October 22nd at approximately 4 a.m., utilizing critical details obtained during interviews, troopers located Mr. Gareffa's body in a remote area near Oneida Mine Road in Brush Valley Township, Indiana County, approximately 2 miles from his grandmother's residence. Specifically, his body was located in an area of tall weeds or brush along an access road in that area. Indiana County Coroner Jerry Overman Jr. responded to the scene and ruled the manner of death a homicide.
The coroner determines that Hayden was probably murdered within an hour after he was kidnapped on October 20th. And there's no doubt that this violent murder, planned by at least 3 of those inside the van that they know of at this time, was very violent and premeditated. There is also evidence that he was savagely beat up. It might sound shocking to believe that this group thought for 1 minute they could do this and get away with it. But that's not how these mob mentality like abductions and murders work. Those involved don't necessarily think in this manner. This is one of those classic cases of rage taking control, anger manifesting into violence. I read something just recently that anger is a natural human emotion. We all experience anger. It's part of who we are. But that anger we all sometimes feel, turning into violent rage, is something entirely different. Rage takes over when that anger becomes uncontrollable and overwhelms a person due to a litany of triggering factors: past traumas, a sordid perception of injustice, stress, a feeling of being threatened, a lack of coping mechanisms, irrational thought, on and on. Once you involve those factors, adrenaline leads to an intense urge to act out in an aggressive and often violent manner. So the adrenaline inside you is fueling this rage now. Within all of that, in this situation, you don't have people thinking about things clearly. Rage is doing all the thinking. So it's easy to then understand, I think, how getting away with this was not in any part of the thought process going into it. What drove them was revenge and payback. This does not, I should say, in any way shift responsibility or guilt. They knew exactly what they were doing and the consequences.
Indiana County Coroner Jerry Overman Jr. responded to the scene and ruled the manner of death a homicide. Based upon information gathered at the scene, Mr. Garreffa was determined to have died on Thursday, October 20th at approximately 2:30 p.m. An autopsy conducted yesterday, October 24th, revealed that Mr. Garreffa had been stabbed numerous times about his upper body, neck, and head. Based on numerous interviews, we determined that Mr. Garreffa was coerced to exit his residence and, after being led into the van, was driven to the previously mentioned remote location in Brush Valley Township. He was then removed from the van and was physically assaulted and stabbed numerous times. Mr. Garreffa's body was then dragged a short distance and left in an area of tall weeds or brush. All 8 suspects then left the scene in the same vehicle and later traveled to the city of Johnstown, where many of them were apprehended over the course of the next several days. By Monday morning, and with assistance from various law enforcement agencies, all 8 suspects were apprehended and various items of evidence were recovered. It has become clear to our investigators that this group of 8 individuals was involved in a preconceived plan, and that a member or members of the group were motivated by a personal grievance against Mr. Garreffa. In an effort to maintain the integrity of this investigation, we do not plan to release additional information regarding the defendant's potential individual or collective.
Further explaining their guilt and clear knowledge of what they did, when troopers found Puchkowski and Summer Settlemeyer in a rundown, shitty Johnstown apartment, they had recently dyed their hair. In fact, Puchkowski still had red stains on his head, neck, and ears from the dye. Questioning Puchkowski, he tells them that the clothing he wore during the murder is inside the trash. The problem for prosecutors, however, is how to sort out charges among 8 defendants, with most of them playing different roles in the kidnapping and murder. And one of them is just a 14-year-old girl. I'll be right back. After 25 years in true crime, writing about and looking at cases involving every type of murder imaginable, I can honestly say that we will never understand the why part involved in certain cases. Like, how does this happen? How does a situation go from roughing up a dude because you believe he did something to murdering him? We could explain it by saying past trauma fueled unchecked rage, which led to committing murder. That is not to blame past abuse or a bad childhood. We are responsible for cleaning up our lives and the actions we take, yet it does explain in some small way what transpired on that day. I think another part of this mob mentality is egging on Puchkowski and his girlfriend. I could see that happening.
The following is a list of names of the adult defendants. As previously mentioned, all 8 defendants have been charged with kidnapping and/or conspiracy to commit kidnapping. In the cases of each of the 7 adults, bail was denied. And I'm just going to read the names here quickly. These are alphabetical by last name. Desan Garcia Alvarez, 21 years of age. Isaac Joel Puchkowski, 21 years of age. Mia Shai Catalfano, 18 years of age. Taylin Nichelle Edwards, 18 years of age. Thomas Allen Rivera, 20 years of age. Summer Isabella Settlemeyer, 18 years of age. Jessie Lee Wadsworth, 18 years of age. Juvenile female, 14 years of age. All of these defendants are from the Johnstown area, with the exception of Mr. Alvarez. He is from Hammond, Indiana. Ongoing assistance from the Indiana County District Attorney's Office and the Indiana County Coroner's Office.
Ultimately, the 7 adults in that van are charged with criminal homicide. The 14-year-old girl is at first charged as a juvenile with kidnapping. Turns out some of the people in the van didn't even know each other or Hayden. Talon Edwards, who admitted to stabbing Hayden, pleads guilty but mentally ill to charges of first-degree murder. This was after she had been evaluated by psychologists. Her attorney claims she had a significant mental impairment at the time of the murder. She is sentenced to life in a state prison, not a mental facility, without the possibility of parole. Another fact comes out during the various court cases of those involved, that Hayden was also stomped on by the group. Then a shocker to me. All of this stems from a personal grudge against Hayden. That 14-year-old juvenile I mentioned, she is eventually charged as an adult and admits to planning the kidnapping and to participating in Hayden's murder. The remaining defendants and their cases are still active and not yet resolved by the courts. We can't believe what's happening right now, Hayden Garreffa's grandmother, Helen Reed, wrote on Facebook. Feels so unreal. We just need love and support. That's it for this week. And before I go, please get over to patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps and sign up for my free content page, where I'll be interacting with you, doing live streams, posting exclusive content, sending out newsletters, and dropping a major limited series podcast exclusively for Patreon members later this year. That's patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps. patreon.com/MWilliamPhelps. As always, be safe, be aware. Sources for this episode include Talon Edwards, Police Criminal Complaint, November 8th, 2022. 2 suspects in Garreffa homicide dyed their hair before meeting with police. Patrick Buchanowski, The Tribune Democrat, November 23rd, 2022. Life without parole given in kidnap stabbing death. Altoona Mirror, June 20th, 2024. Crossing the Line is executive produced by M. William Phelps, LLC, and Matthew Valentinus, Mom's Basement Management. Written by me, M. William Phelps. Audio mastering and mixing by Matt Russell. Music by Epidemic Sound. Original music written and performed by Thomas Mooney, Tom Phelps, and Matt Russell.